So let the Haredi.
Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Yomi and Mציעא, as we learned for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Nasun Batzar V'Shivya. Says the Mishnah, Daf Yomi. A man saw people running after a lost item in his own field. Now, after, let's call it a damaged animal, a damaged deer who can't run very fast, or after pigeons that can't fly. And therefore the point is that he's able to reach them before they leave his field. But Omar, and he said, Zochli said, I want my field, which we learned a field could be Zocher for you like a chotzer, right? We had the discussion yesterday. Is a chotzer because of yad or is it because of shlichus? But it's at least shlichus. Yad is even stronger, as we'll talk about, because there it helps by a get, even against her will. But the point is that he said, I want my field to acquire this animal or this bird for me. It works. Zachsalo. It works for him. Why? Because he could acquire it. He could actually reach it anyway. But let's say the deer was running quickly. It was fast, gazelle. It was flying. Kedarka. Osha goes, or the pigeons were flying. Then he said, I want my field to acquire them for me. Lo Amar Klum. It's meaningless because he couldn't reach them. And because he couldn't reach them before they would leave his field, it doesn't work. So what is this kind of a kinyan? He wants his chotzer, like, a chotzer can be acquired something. If something is in my field, I can acquire it. It's only if you're standing next to the field. If you're standing next to the field and you say, I want my field to acquire this for me, and it's in the field. In other words, if it's flying away or running away and you wouldn't be able to reach it anyway, it's not considered in your field. But if it's considered in your field and you're standing there, then it works. Says Gemara, what does he have to stand there for? What do I have to stand there for? My son should acquire from me. My field, it's like your own chatzer, your own courtyard or field or whatever, your property can acquire something for you even without your knowledge. If it's to your advantage, it could work anyway. Says the Gemara, Hani mili b'chatzer, that's only if the chatzer is a guarded field. In this case, we're talking about a chatzer which is not guarded by itself. So if you're standing there, so if a chatzer she'ein mishmeres doesn't work, so therefore it's a chatzer she'ein mishmeres. If it's a chatzer that's not guarded, if you stand there, that means you're guarding it. Now it's guarded. If it's a, let's call it an unwalled or unfenced field, then it's not guarded. So then it wouldn't acquire for you. If it's guarded, then it could acquire for you even if you're not there. But here we're talking about a chotzer which is not guarded. Obviously, it's an open field, and if the animals, as we said, could run away, it doesn't help you if you couldn't reach it in time. If you couldn't capture it, it wouldn't work. If you're standing there, fine. Because if you're standing there, like Rashi says, now you're guarding it. If you're standing there, then it works. No. We're talking about something. Of course, we're talking about some. Talking about something gets hefker. Obviously, we're talking about Mציעא. That's what the discussion here is about, something which is a Mציעא. You're bringing up a good point because we're going to talk about that. If it's somebody else's and they're giving it to you, that's an issue. If it's somebody else's dog running through my field, I can't just say it's mine. Obviously, we're talking about something which is hefker. So if it's hefker, does my field acquire it for me? So we said if it's something that would be in your field that you could capture it, it could stay in your field. In other words, it's just sitting in your field, a box, a hefker sitting in your field. You could be konet if it's mishtameres, if it's a guarded field, and if you're standing there, then it's guarding. You're guarding it. Again, hani mile b'chatzer mishtameres. B'chatzer she'ein mishtameres. If you're standing there, fine. Ilolo. If you're not standing there, then it's not a chatzer mishtameres. Shalom midaito, meaning, let's say something's in my field, and you have no idea it's there. But no. Okay, so a bird, if it's to your advantage, if you want to keep it, as we'll see, if it's shlichus, because that's the rule of chotzer. Chotzer is, we had yesterday's either because of yad, it's like your extension of yad. If you're not there, that's like your shliach. It's your shliach. Like shliach sham. In other words, we have a call that's zachan shalom v'farav. It's a chus for you. No, that's not have to be. The chotzer is your shliach. In other words, is your shliach. And if it's shlomidai, if it's to your advantage, I'm happy if it's in my field. Let's say I'm happy it's in my field. I'm happy because if I don't want it, I don't have to. It doesn't work. It only if it's Zachal Adam Shalom B'Fanav. If it's a spus for him, if it's not a spus for him, if he doesn't want it, it doesn't work. As we saw, we're going to talk about it later on. Let's say a man gives a get to his wife and puts it in her chutzner. She doesn't want the get, so it doesn't work. It doesn't work if she's not standing there because there's no yad there, and she doesn't want it to be a shliach. You can't make me a shliach if I don't want to be a shliach. But the chutzner could be a shliach for you if it's to your advantage. That's how chutzner works. That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. And it's learned out of the psukim. That was on yesterday's daf. Because there's menasa mikomakim. How do you know gago chatzei people? If you give it in your hand, that's one thing. He must say it was learned out from a ganef. If a ganef stole something, you find it in his hand, you got to pay double, right? Okay, that's only you find his hand. How do you know if he found it in his house, in his gag, or wherever it is? If it went there, if you put it there, because that's kona for him also. That's the concept of chutzner. Chutzner is mitam, at least mitam shlichus, and possibly mitam yad. If it's mitam yad, though, its own yad means it's an extension of my hand. I have to be standing there. So if he's standing there, that's what it means. Okay, but that's only again. So our mishus means that when you cone it for you, this item that, as we said, that's running in your field, that you could reach it before it left the field, but you say, I want my field. I'm not standing there right now. I'm standing next to the field. When does it work? Only if I'm standing next to the field, then it works. If not, it doesn't work. And the Elo Tanya. I'm sorry, I skipped line. If it's not guarded, if you're standing there fine, then you are the guard. You're making a chasmeres. Now the Gemara goes in. How do I know the how do I know this idea that a chutzner that's not guarded? If I'm standing, then I'm the guard. Fine. If not, how do you know? The Tanya from a different topic entirely. You know, if you go in your field and you're picking the crops, and if you forget something, it's called shikha. If I forgot it, I'm not allowed to take it back. I have to give it. Can't go back and get it. Leave it for the niyim. The Tanya. Let's say I didn't forget this item. I knew I left a bundle in the field, and I knew I didn't forget about it, and I told my workers to bring it to the city for me. They forgot it. Now I'm in the city. And it says, I know about the bundle that I have in the field. They forgot it. And he's upset that they forgot it. He didn't forget it. Then I might think, now afterwards he forgot it. First he remembered. See, a shikha is only if you forgot something in the field. If you didn't forget it, you say, I'm going to give this to Yankel. I'm going to give this to... You didn't forget it. You designated. That's not forgetting. Here, he didn't forget it. He told his workers to bring it. Then afterwards, he forgot about it in the city. Yachol, again, like I might think it's not shikha. It's not shikha, right? Again, I don't want it to be forgotten. I know I left it there in the field. I told the workers to bring it. I don't want it to be shikha. I might think it's not shikha. If you forget the bundle in the field, sounds like it's only shikha if you forgot it in the field, but not in the city. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? You're saying a contradiction. You're saying, how do I know? I might think that's something that I remembered and the workers forgot, and I'm in the city now. I'm not there and not near the field anymore. And now I forgot about it now. I might think it's not shikha, teaching me that it is shikha effectively. I might think that it's not, meaning you're going towards proving that it is shikha. Then he says, no, in the city it's not. So the Gemara says, you seem to contradict yourself. Amrit, you said shikha. I might think it's not shikha if I forget it in the city after I remembered it initially. But then I forgot it in the city. I might think it's not shikha. You're trying to prove that it is shikha. I might think it's not shikha. So you're trying to say that it is shikha. The Nasul Gemara, then you bring a proof from the Talmud. The son of a shachachta v'lo ba'ir. Tell me that it's only shikha if I forget it in the field, not in the city, indicating alma lo shikha. So which one is it? Elalav hochikamer. The sada shachuach mikar in the field. If I forgot it initially, have a shikha. If I forgot it initially, that's shikha. I can't go back. Zocher lebesov shachuach. Let's say though I remembered it initially. I said, I'm going to leave this for them. And then afterwards I forgot about it. Ain't shikha. My time. Kiva the goy gabal. Because since you're standing there, since you're out in the field, you're next to the field. Because once you remembered it in the field, you didn't forget it. I said, this bundle I'm leaving for Yankel. Afterwards, I forgot about it. My field was mezaket for me. Why? Because I was standing there. Because chatzar is mishum yad. Avol be'ir. But if I'm in the city, afilu zachal b'sof shachuach. in the city, even if I remembered it initially and then I forgot about it, it is shikha. Even if I remembered about it initially and then I forgot about it, it's called shikha. My timer, the less because he's not there to be zochet for him. So even if you remembered it initially, if he's not in the city, if he's not near the field, it doesn't work. So this is a proof to the idea that if you're standing next to the field could be mazaket for you. That's why it works. That's why it works if you remembered it initially in the field and you're standing there, so it's yours now. It's not goes to Raniyim, even if you forgot afterwards. But if you're out in the city and you remembered it there and then you forgot it, then it doesn't help because you're not there to be zalkit for you. So even if you remembered it initially and you're in the city, it doesn't help. Says the Gemara. How do you know that's the reason? How do you know that's b'chal what we're talking about? Mimai, maybe the pasuk should be interpreted differently. The basara havi shikha, v'ir lavi shikha. Shikha is only if you forget about it when you're in the field, when you're plowing, when you're gathering the stuff and your workers, etc. Anything they forget is forget, but anything in the city is not. Maybe that's a pshat. Maybe shachachta omer basara means it's only considered shikha that you have to leave for the aniyim now if you forgot it in the field, but not if you were in the city. Maybe that's when Amar Krois says, "Lo sasha lakachto." It says, never, don't return to take it back. L'rabos shikrasir, to include shikrasir. So we know shikrasir is also shikha. The drasha though is that this that we say that it's considered shikha is if you forgot it. If you forgot it, right? He says, and Rashi explains that I might think that if you're in the city and your workers forgot about it, it's shikha anyway, even if you knew about it. That's the point. Why? Because there is shikha in the ear. You might say there's no shikha in the ear at all. Doesn't know. It says lo shafakach Rav Shapiro. So hami boy little lav. That's to teach me that there's a lo sasa. You're over in a lav. If you go back and get it, it's a lav sheish b'mas. If you go back and gather it again, that's what lo sasa v'kachla teaches me. Who says it's talking about the city? Lo sikachet could say don't take it. My lo toshuv. What is lo toshuv? Don't return the rabba shikha say ear. Katimi boile, who says maybe they need the drasha of lo sasha tanan shalafon of ein shikha. If it's in front of you, in other words, while you're walking, while you're harvesting, and you're going down the path, and you're going one after another, if it's in front of you, that's not shikha yet. You haven't forgotten it. Shikha is only if you already passed that. Maybe that's what lo tashuv l'kachas teach me, that it's only an isser if you have to go back and get it after you've already passed that bundle. But if you haven't passed it, you're not. Zeh called kosher b'val tashuv shikha. Anything which involves returning, going back, that's shikha. Kosher and b'val tashuv ain't a shikha. Maybe it's for that drasha. In other words, maybe there is no such thing as shikha if you're in the city at all. How do you know that shikha applies in the city too? And that the way we darshan it is that if you're in the field and you initially did not forget it, then your field was zochet for you. But in the city, even if you remembered initially and your workers forgot about it, it's also shikha. How do you know? Maybe shikha doesn't apply in the city at all. The pasuk says, to tell me, even including if you forgot in the city, even if you're not at the field. So therefore, the shikha applies both in the city and in the field. But the drasha is that if you're in the field and you forgot about it, but you're standing there in the field, so you're standing there. If you're standing there, your chutzner requires it for you. That's the difference that a chutzner acquires for you. Why? Because it's chutzner mishtameres. If it would be a field that's encircled with fences and walls, then it's also mishtameres, even if you're not standing there. But if you're standing there, that makes it chutzner mishtameres. If you're not standing there, you're in the city. That's the difference, that it doesn't acquire it for you. So even if you remembered initially, it doesn't work for you. So this is just the proof. This is the proof that there's a difference between standing there versus not standing there. And therefore, in our Mishnah, when it says, my field should acquire it for me, if my field is not fenced in, if I'm standing there, it acquires for me. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Ula says the same drasha that we started with at the beginning of the Mar Shmuel. He says the same thing. When does it work when I say I want my field to acquire for me? If it's a chutzner mishmeres, I'm standing there. So they're saying that when does sada acquire it for you? Your chutzner, your territory acquires for you only if you're standing there. If you're not standing there, it doesn't work. Now the Gemara has a big kasha. Yeah.
the Gemara, based on it's a definition of what's forgetting. I mean, we're not talking, this was his field, right?
Right.
So the
Forgetting is forgetting.
now what's forgetting?
No.
Maybe
No. Are you talking about the case of shikha? Are you talking about the case of the shikha? Forgetting is forgetting. I forgot it.
Yeah, but in other words, it's his field.
Yeah.
Right?
No, but the drush, the answer is the pasuk says with shachacht omer basada. That's the drasha. The drasha is if you forget it in the field, then it's forgetting, and forgetting in the field. But if you didn't forget it, then your field acquired it for you. You don't give it to the poor people. Whereas in the city, in the city, it's shikha, even if you didn't forget it. When does it become shikha? When it becomes shikha in the field? Only if you're in the field and you forget it initially. But if you remembered it initially, you said, "Oh, I'm not forgetting this. I'm giving it to Yankel," and then you forgot about it. That's okay. It's not shikha anymore. Why? Because it's only when you're in the field, the shachar masada, as opposed to the city, where even if you remembered it initially, it doesn't help. If your workers forgot about it, it's still considered shikha. In other words, the idea that shikha is only if I forget it initially is only but if I didn't forget initially, it's not shikha. That's only in the field. That's the pasuk shachar masada, not in the city. So what are we saying now? That your field can only acquire for you if you're standing there. If it's not a chotzer mishmeres. Eser Rav Abelula, famous story. Ma'aser Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel Azakan was on a boat, and these were not ocean liners, traveling far distances. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have forgotten. We're talking about a boat on the river in Eretz Yisrael. Ma'aser Rabbi Gamliel was getting Shayibah. They were coming on a boat. Rabbi Gamliel, I just remembered I forgot to take Ma'aser. I forgot to take Trumas Ma'aser, and I'm afraid maybe somebody in my house will eat it. Even though there's a cloud that a tzaddik would never leave it, without taking Trumas Ma'aser. That's if he's traveling a long distance. Maybe he was just on a day trip, whatever. So he was afraid somebody's going to eat it. So he said, "How am I going to give Trumas Ma'aser right now? I have a silo, I have a farm, whatever, and my crops are there. What am I going to do?" So he was with these other rabbis on the boat with Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya, and he said, "Amar Gamliel Iser Shani Yasad Lamud. I'm going to take Meiser when I get back. That not only I'm giving it to Yeshua right now. Yeshua ben Hananya was a Levi, and he could take Meiser Rishon. He was with him on the boat. So I'm giving it to you. Now, how is he giving him how is he acquiring it? That's the question. He's giving it to you right now. Again, Iser Shani Yasad Lamud, doesn't sure. So of course it gets into the question of Breira, but assuming over here that there's no issue of Breira, that it's okay. But how is he giving it to him? He's giving it to him right now. I'm giving it to Yoshua, who's with me on the boat. Umakoma muskalo. How am I giving it to him? I'm giving the place that it's sitting on in my barn, in my silo. I'm renting it to him right now. He's going to give me $5 right now to rent that spot. So he has that chutzner, and he's going to acquire the meiser that I'm giving to him. The Iser Acher with that, and it was a year of Meiser Ani, right? Meiser Rishon in the 3rd and the 6th year, you give Meiser Rishon, Meiser Ani. In the 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th years, it's Meiser Sheni. This is the year of Meiser Ani. The Iser Acher Sheni Yosef Lamu that I'm going to measure out when I get back. Nasan Lakiva, I'm giving to Rabbi Kiva. There's a Kiva Yosef. Why? Because he was the Gabait Stucca for the poor people. Kadeshias Gibalin is giving to Aniyim. Umakoma Muskalon, I'm renting him the spot. Now, so that worked. Now he gave him the spot. Now, how did he work? How did he give him the spot? They were on the boat. The Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yeshua were not standing next to their chutzner that he's renting to them right now. How did he make it? How did he give it to them? Good point. Get a handkerchief. Okay, well, we're going to talk about that. Rabbi Yeshua. So Irving's asking good, but the Gemara doesn't say that that's the story. The story was that he rented him the spot. If he's giving it to him with a handkerchief, right? Let's say so. He didn't give it to him with a handkerchief. I'm renting him the space so that he's acquiring it via the chutzner. Were they standing next to his field? They were with him on the boat. So what are you talking about? How do you say that you have to stand next to the field in order for the chutzner to work? That's the whole point of it. It works only because you're standing there. Here they weren't standing there. Amalei, but let's keep in mind what Irving's question was about we're going to come to that. Amalei, so what happened? Rav Abba was the one who asked this kasha, right? After we had Rav Yehuda, Rav Shmuel, and we had Ula and Rav Barchana, they all said you have to be standing there. So Rav Abba asked Ula, what do you mean? What about this story? They weren't standing there when they acquired the meiser from Rav Gamliel on the boat. I think this guy doesn't know how to learn, or he thinks that other people don't learn. You don't know what you're talking about. I think this rabbi, this young scholar, as if people don't learn Gemara, they don't know the halach. Okay, like he said, like he dismissed them. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, why? So Kiyasel Surah Rav Abba continued on his trap. He came to Surah. He told them, this is what Ula said, like Rabbi Shmuel and like Rav Archana, that you have to be standing next to the chutzner for it to work, right? For the chutzner to work, it's only if you're standing there, so it's chutz m'shtaris. That's what he said. And I asked him to kasha from the boat. I didn't get a good answer. All he did was he cursed me out. I didn't get an answer. Why does that work? One of the rabbis said, he wasn't he didn't give it to them. He didn't give it to them by a chutzner. You're right. Chutzner, for a chutzner to work, you have to be standing there. He wasn't standing there. It didn't work. Again, when you're konit, so to speak, Amish is talking about hefker. We're going to see there's a difference there. Somebody brought that up. What happens if somebody else sells it to you or gives it to you? There's going to be a difference. We'll see. But first answer was Ramaliel didn't give it to them to acquire via their chutzner. If it was via chutzner, they'd have to be standing there. Here it was, he sold them or rented them the karka, like we talked about, you kona agav, like you kona the chometz agav. If you're traveling away and how do you give it to the rabbi? So you give him a piece of your property and he's kona the chometz, the metaltal agav that. He was giving to metaltal agav makarka hiknalam. He was giving to them with the kinyan agav, meaning he sold them or rented them. Renting is really a temporary sale. He rented them the property and the metalton came via that. It wasn't a case of a chutzner. Normally, metalton is only nicknamed, but meshicha over the chutzner. But you could also acquire agav karka. That's what happened. Rav Zera Kibla. Rav Zera accepted that answer. Rav Zera he said, yeah, that's a good answer. You're right. Normally, chutzner would need that. We'd have to stand it, but this wasn't chutzner. This is a kinyan agav. Rav Abba lo Kibla. Rav Abba, who asked the question initially, he didn't accept that. Rav said, shop. But he didn't accept that answer. He didn't accept that answer that he called agav. Whereas we'll see. Amarava, Shapiro Kibla. It's good that he didn't accept it. You know why? Your kasha, right? What does that mean? What does that mean? You say it wasn't. It was good that you didn't accept that answer of what? Of kinyan agav. Let's say, why did they need to go agav or chutzner? Like you said, why didn't they have a chalipin? Why didn't you just give them the chalipin? Let Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shua give them their handkerchief or their pen, and he would give them the that way. Ella, you know why? He couldn't work with chalipin. Why? Because what did Rabbi Leal have in that meiser? Would it really belong to him? When you give meiser, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God, right? You have to give it away. All he has is the tovas hanah, the goodwill that he can give it to whichever Levi or poor person he wants. Tovas hanah, einamam, it's not considered money. Liktus men chalipin. Chalipin only works when you're acquiring something, when you're buying something with money, a real a financial transaction, a buy and a sell. Here it's not a buy and a sell because you don't really own it. You only have a goodwill interest, and therefore chalipin doesn't work. Just like chalipin only works in mekach umemker, a buy and a sell, the same way tovas, and it doesn't work on tovas hanah when you're not buying and selling. This is tovas hanah, and therefore you can't be kon agav karka. Also, agav karka only works when you are buying or selling something. I'm selling you property, I'm selling you my car, and together with the karka, you can acquire the car. That's you're buying and selling, not when it's just a goodwill interest. That's what he answered. And therefore, Rav Abba's kasha is still a good kasha. Why wasn't the chutzner? How did the chutzner work? You're saying it doesn't work for chalipin and it doesn't work for aga because it's not really selling anything. So how did it work? By a chutzner, but the chutzner was not mishtameres. He wasn't standing there. Rav Abba's kasha is kasha, but the Gemara says before. Pardon?
You just sell him a piece of land,
right?
The land where the meiser is, and now it belongs to
another meeting.
Yeah, he could sell him another piece of property, but he can't sell him the meiser that way.
No, so
the whole idea is he has to give him the meiser right now. He's giving the meiser while they're on the boat so that the people back home could eat it. But he can't sell the meiser that way. He could sell him karka that way, but he can't sell him the meiser if he's selling him karka. But the king Ag wouldn't work. But so he says, so therefore, Rav Abba's kasha is a good kasha. The answer they gave was not good to Loi, but the Gemara doesn't say that. Gemara says not good. Why? Because matanas kahuna and a scenic sibay. When it comes to matanas kahuna, it's talking about giving, boo. right? Chalipin doesn't work as derech memkru. Chalipin only works with mekach memkru, buying and selling. I'm selling you rights, and I'm selling you this. I give you the shoe, and I'm getting the property, like we found we found with Ifsan in Rus, right? So there it's derech mekach memkru. That chalipin works. But over here, a kinyan agav would work on the karka. Why? Because that's good. Because when it comes to meiser, it says v'nasan. You have to give it. Matanas kuna, you're giving it, and giving something agav karka does work. Chalipin wouldn't work. That's why they couldn't do it with a handkerchief, because chalipin is only derech mekach memker. But when it comes to kinyan agav, it does work. So what was their answer to Rav Abba? What happened? Let's go back. Ula and the other rabbi said that you have to be standing there for the chutzner to work. He says, what do you mean? They weren't standing there in the case of the boat. They weren't standing there by the chutzner. He gave them the chutzner. The answer is he wasn't giving them the meiser to acquire it via their chutzner. He was giving it to acquire it via the karka. I'm renting you the karka, and I'm giving you the meiser agav that, and that does work. Chalipin wouldn't work. That's one answer. So what are we saying now? That the case of the boat was not chutzner. The case of the boat was not chutzner. It was a kinyan agav. I'm selling you the property or renting you the property, and I'm giving you the meiser agav that. That's why it worked. It wasn't the case. It wasn't the case of chutzner at all. You don't have to give the answer of tovas anah, because we're saying why did it or didn't?
Why does it work even with the agav?
Because it says v'nasan. Because it says v'nasan. Because when it comes to matanas kun is nesina, and that's considered a good giving. You can give that way too. Chalipin wouldn't work because you have to make memker. But for giving something, a gift, a donation or a gift, that would work agav karka. That's one answer to answer Rav Abba why, even though normally we say for a chutzner to work you have to be standing there, it's got to be a chutzner mishtameres. Whereas in the case of the boat, we weren't kona agav chutzner. It wasn't the chutzner. It wasn't because of the chutzner acquiring it for you. It was kona agav, a kinyan agav. I'm giving you karka or selling you karka and giving you the matanas on top of that. Rav Papa gives a different answer. Rav Papa says there's a difference between our Mishnah and this case of here. Rav Papa says, Das acheres makno sunshiny. It's different when somebody else is giving it to you. In our Mishnah, we're talking about acquiring something from Hefker. Acquiring something from Hefker, you have to be standing there. It's got to be a chutzner mishtameres, right? To that the chutzner works maybe because of shlichus, but it's got to be with your. It's not a chutzner. It's not a proper chutzner to acquire something if you're acquiring it from Hefker. But if somebody else is giving it to you, then it doesn't have to be chutzner mishtameres. Rav Papa says, "Lo taros chutzner kind." So according to Rav Papa, they were getting chutzner. I feel like lo tikshu lo. Why says Rashi? The lot of being chutzner mishum dasach. Why? Because somebody else is giving it to you. Mulio was makneh to them. When Mulio is makneh to them, then you don't need that. How do we know that works? How do we know there's a difference if somebody's giving it to you or you're acquiring it on your own, like from Hefker? We're not telling the Tanan. Our Mishnah. You saw other people running after this mitzi, after this animal running in your field or whatever. That only works if you could reach them before the animals would run away, like we saw in the Mishnah. If the animal is broken, is hurt, injured, can't fly, whatever, you can reach them. But boy, Rav Yirmiyah, and Rav Yirmiyah says, what happens if you're not acquiring it from Hefker in your field? It's running through your field, you want to acquire. What happens if somebody's giving it to you? Somebody says, oh, the animal, I sent it to you. I pushed the animal in your direction. He's going through your field. Do I also have to be able to reach it before? It's understood from this question, even if you couldn't reach the animal, your field acquires it for you anyway. My time, what's the difference? What's the difference? It's not chutzner mishtameres if I can't reach it. My time, sunshiny, because when somebody else is giving it to me, that's different. So that's why it works over there. So again, if you're acquiring something from Hefker like our Mishnah, you have to be standing there. Rav Abba asked you from the case of the boat. The case of the boat is different because they're not acquiring it on their own. Rav Mulio is giving it to them. Then it works even if they're not standing there. What about how get? What about a get? The son, husband's giving her the get. She's got to be standing there. If he throws it into her house or into her chutzner, she's got to be standing next to the house of b'tzad chatzera. So there it works. Even though it's das acheres makno, you still have to be standing there. The shiny get, the isabal kocha. Get, she doesn't want to receive necessarily. So there, if she's standing there, then it works, right? She has to be standing there. She doesn't want to get it. But over here, in a case of a gift or in case of mice, whatever, it's only where you want to receive it. If we want it, it presumably there, you would want to receive it. So then it works if somebody's giving it to you, even if you're not standing there. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, you could say the other way around. The other way around. Umadach get the Isabel Korcha, which he can force upon her. Even against her will, she is divorced. And it's only if she's standing there it works. But if she's not standing, it doesn't work. Matana de midaite, where you don't have to accept it. Again, she has no choice. If he gives it in her lap, he puts it in her hand, she's divorced no matter what. So over there, it still only works if she's standing there. But over here, so by Matana, where he doesn't have to accept it, I don't want to receive it again. So certainly you should have to stand there. Matana de midaite, which is of her own will. If she doesn't want to accept it, certainly she has to be standing there. So how can you say that there's a difference between if somebody's giving it to you or you're acquiring it on your own? If you're acquiring it on your own, you have to be standing there. If somebody's giving it to you, you don't have to be standing there. Just the opposite. If somebody's giving it to me, I don't have to accept it. So why should it work if I'm not standing there? Elam Ravashi, the difference is not because of being forced, because it's against your will or not. The difference is this: Chatzar is Rabbi Yad. We saw in yesterday's daf that how does chatzar work? Because if it's a yad, it's like an extension of your hand. Okay, that's if you're standing there. But logar mishlichas, but it's no worse than shlichas. If I want to accept it, if I send the shliach to get something from me, do I have to be standing there? No. So if my chatzar, it's at worst it's shlichus. But if shlichus doesn't work, if I don't want it to work, it can't work. But yad works anyway. Gabe get the chovula by get was considered an obligation for her. She doesn't want to get it, and so ein chavlam shel b'fanav. You cannot be mechayev a person something unless you're standing there. So she has to be standing there for it to work. You can't force it to put it in her house and she's not there. Where it's a gift and presumably he'd want to receive it, and it can work because of shlichus. And as Rashi says, take a Rashi in the first of the airlines, when she's not there, she's not standing there, it doesn't work because of yad. Yad only works if there. Like the Rebbe Shlichus, the Gabi Shlichus, right? It doesn't work. Why? Gabi Shlichus, ikadas das a shliach or das a shliach. Either the shliach is his das or the das a shliach. Abba Chotzer doesn't have any das. Below das shliach hilkach beina and das acheres maknoso. So you need the das acheres maknoso, and that's why they say there's a difference when if I'm accepting it on my own. If I'm accepting it on my own, meaning I'm being zochet from hefker, I got to be standing there. Why? Because nobody else is giving it to me. But if somebody else is giving it to me, even if I'm not standing there and it's a schus for me because of shlichus, I don't have to. And that's why in the case of the boat, where somebody else is giving it to them and it's a schus for them to receive it, they don't have to be standing there. And their chutzah could work mitam shlichus. If they're standing there, then it works mitam yad, and then even a get would work. But if, let's say, if she's not standing there, if it's talking about a get, and she's not standing there, it's not a schus for her to get divorced. So she doesn't want it to be a shlichus. You can't force a shlichus upon her. If she's standing there, then it's her yad. She accepts it even against her will. But if she's not standing there, it can only work because of shlichus. Well, you can acquire something if it's a schus for the person, it's a merit. But if it's a demerit for the person, like she doesn't want to get divorced, you can't force it upon her, and therefore the chutzner or the house would not act as a shliach. Gufa, going back to our Mishnah, our Mishnah said, he saw people running after this injured deer running through his field, and he could get to it before it would leave his field. And he said, I want my field to be zakat for me. It works. Again, as we said, that only works if he could get to the animal before it leaves his field. And we said the same thing. What happens if somebody's giving it to him? Does he also have to be able to reach it? So Kibamine, Rav Abba Barkani, except that even if you would run after you couldn't get to it, your field was mazakit for you. Your field was mazakit for you. Why? Because it worked. Why? Because you're standing there. You're standing there. But even if you couldn't reach it, it would work because if you're standing there, it would work. But if somebody's giving it to you, you don't even have to do that because somebody's giving it to you, so you accept it. It's a schus for you. By Rav Zarek Arniki Pesach said, what happens if somebody throws away a purse? He's giving it to Hefker. I'm giving it to Hefker, and he throws it through a house, somebody else's house, and it went in through one door, and left through another door. And one trajectory. It didn't stop in the house. Smell. It went through airspace, which is it's not going to fall down. It's not going to reach the ground. If it would reach the ground, you could say it's k'moshe hunachdami. But if it's not going to reach the ground, it's going to go right through one window and out the other. Is that like it's rested on the ground, and therefore the person who would acquire it, in other words, I'm throwing my purse through your field, through your house, and it would be a schluss for you, and I'm being makna to you. I'm giving it to you, whoever wants to get it. I'm giving it to you. Is that like it fell in your field and you could acquire it? Oh, lo. Isn't that the same as our Mishnah? People say, some people run here from Mציעא. Again, that's something you can reach it. But Rav Yomi said again for the third time. What about a matana? If somebody gave it to you, matana, if it's a gift, even if you couldn't reach it, it's still considered yours because somebody's giving it to you. In other words, we made this difference, like our Papa said, between das acheres makno, so or not. If it's not, if you're just acquiring it from Hefker, then you have to be standing and you have to be able to reach it. If it's das acheres makno, so even if you can't reach it, it's considered yours. It worked. So that would be the same as throwing the purse through the house. It's different. When you talk about an animal running through your field, a bird or whatever, something in your field, it's like rolling. It's on the ground. If it's rolling, it's like it hit the ground. Then it's considered like yours. Then it's considered yours if somebody else gave it to you. Even though you couldn't reach it. But if somebody threw a purse through your house and through one in one window and out another window, or one door and out another door, and is that considered like it rested there and you acquired it? Not necessarily so. Rashi says, last Rashi him again. There it works, but it wouldn't work necessarily. We can't be posted the shaila of throwing a purse through from one door and go out to another door. So at the end of the day, we say that Rav Papa says das acheres maknos is different, and therefore even if you couldn't reach it, it's still considered yours and you acquire it. I'll pick up the Mishnah tomorrow, Mitzvah. Chodesh Tov, Shavua Tov, Kol Tov.